Hi everyone. CLAT 2023 was successfully conducted today. Today we also have FIFA final. So before that, let's see how you have performed, how the paper was, how the pattern was, and were there any surprises, what will be the expected cutoff, and the overall difficulty level of the paper. As you know that there were no surprises as such in terms of pattern. The pattern was exactly similar as we had CLAT 2022 like last year. So we had 30 questions in English, 35 questions in current affairs and general knowledge, 40 questions in legal, 30 questions in logical reasoning, and 15 questions in quant. Pattern was exactly similar, exact number of passages, exact number of questions. So no surprises there. Like in ALET, we had slight surprise regarding the questions were common, the passage was common for English and logical reasoning. Here in CLAT 2023, there were no surprises. However, the paper was a bit unexpected in certain sections. Current affairs and general knowledge was not conventional. It was not the kind of questions were not that you are used to, you have been practicing, and the kind of questions that usually we expect. The questions were a bit different this time, and most candidates found general knowledge and current affairs of CLAT 2023 the most difficult section. So pattern, no changes. Slight change in the form of asking question, the kind of questions that were there in current affairs, also in the quant section. The quant section this time was not that easy. There were only 15 questions, but even those 15 questions, it was really hard to complete that in the limited amount of time. You had 120 minutes for 150 questions, and quant just had 15 questions, but the questions, the calculation was lengthy, the data was not presented in the tabulated form, so it was time consuming. So these were some of the challenges that CLAT aspirants faced in the CLAT 2023. Talking about the difficulty level, I can't say that it was a very difficult paper. It can be considered as a moderate paper, and the balancing factor here were English language section and logical reasoning section. Although lengthy, but these were easy sections. English language and English and logical, they were balancing in the sense that the difficulty level that we faced in general knowledge and current affairs, or some students faced in data interpretation, that is quant, that was balanced out by English and logic. So moderate paper, overall paper was moderate, not a very difficult paper, and not very easy as well because of the mentioned sections. The bouncer section that could be considered that most students could not get the head of tail of it was current affairs and general knowledge. It was a bit different in the sense, it's the passages were not very difficult in this, they were familiar passages. There was passage about, we were predicting that we had the new president, so there could be a passage from the president of India, Draupadi Murmu. There was a complete passage dedicated to her, and the passages were taken from mainstream media like the Hindu, Hindustan Times, Economic Times, the Wire. So these were the mainstream media sources from where the passages were extracted. But the questions that followed those passages, those questions were a bit different. And if I may use the word bizarre, if I may use the word, the kind of questions like that falls more in the category of trivia than your general knowledge as such. So that is how a student has to adapt in the sense that he should be now at least be aware that these are also the kind of questions that usually we ignore that can be asked in the question paper. So current affairs was a bit challenging for most of the candidates. Quant was difficult to moderate. Some students found it moderate, some found it difficult. So it was difficult to moderate because calculations were lengthy. There were questions from regular topics like percentages, find the market price and ratio. However, the data was not presented in a tabulated form. It was not arranged, so you have to, be very careful in making the data, in interpreting the data. That was a bit time consuming. English and logical reasoning were moderate to easy. These were the balancing, as I already mentioned. They were moderate to easy, and legal reasoning was moderate. It was easy, however, the questions were very direct. uh, common sense based questions like usually we get in legal reasoning. And the length, however, was a factor throughout the paper. The length of the paper, be it quant, be it English and logic, be it legal reasoning, the paper was considered to be lengthy, this CLAT 2023. Coming to section by section, English section had similar questions like we are used to having. There were questions from inference drawing. There were questions on metaphors. There were a lot of questions regarding what does this mean, what is the meaning, and synonyms. So meaning, synonyms. If you have had if you have been practicing the vocabulary, and we have been telling you to keep a separate notebook for vocabulary, keep a separate list of words every day so that you have a rich vocabulary at the time you are appearing for the competitive examination for CLAT. So that those students would have got benefited by the rich vocabulary with the, if they knew the meaning of the words that was asked, synonyms that was asked, inference drawing, metaphor. These were the kind of questions that dominated the English section, which was easy section, however a bit lengthy. Current affairs, as already mentioned, was the most difficult section. Again, the questions were contemporary, the questions were latest, the questions, FIFA World Cup tonight is the FIFA final, and they had questions from FIFA that started in November. So question from FIFA, question from Draupadi Murmu president selection, FTX, there was this question regarding a YouTuber Nas Daily, who uh, who made a video about this person. So the name of that person was asked, about the cryptocurrency, about the Bitcoin. Those were the kind of questions that were tested in general knowledge. There were questions regarding electoral bonds. So see, the topics seem usual: electoral bond, president, FIFA, cryptocurrency. These topics are usual topics, predictable topics, but the kind of questions that followed these topics were a bit different. Like one of the questions was like, one of the player from the FIFA passage, one of the player is the son of the president of which country. So this is more of a trivia than a general knowledge question. When you these the and there were questions that students, I interacted with certain students who said that they found the answer to these questions in Instagram reels while watching social media updates. So the questions were a bit off the track, if I can say, a bit different than we usually expect. But that is why some students found current affairs a bit challenging. There was a passage on agriculture that had easy questions like father of wheat revolution and the India's rank in global hunger index. We have been discussing these topics several times. In fact, in time material, you will find the global hunger index and all these kind of questions several at several places. So the topics were predictable, but the kind of questions were a bit different. And now student needs to be aware about that. This is also the one way of asking questions, and these are also the places from where the questions can be asked. So that was about current affairs, which was a bit difficult. In fact, the most difficult section in this paper. Legal reasoning was not difficult. It was lengthy, it can be said. However, it was not difficult. There was a passage from electoral bond. There was a passage from Consumer Protection Act. There was a passage on free legal aid regarding the NALSA. There was a passage on internet shutdown, blocking Twitter handles, cruelty. See, but usually what we understand is we expect passages from torts. There was not a single passage from tort. There was not a single passage from contract. There were passages from miscellaneous areas of law, as I mentioned, Consumer Protection Act, and criminal law was there. There was a passage on cruelty that had sections of Indian Penal Code, and there was a separate passage for Criminal Procedure Identification Act. So criminal law was asked, and miscellaneous areas were asked. So otherwise, the passage, the kind of questions were quite straightforward. You could easily eliminate the options. There was no technicality involved. The other options, the wrong options, were so frivolous that you could easily eliminate them by normal guess, by common sense. So this was a common sense based passage, not very difficult, and students would have easily sailed through legal reasoning section. Logical reasoning was dominated by strengthening and weakening type of questions. That what will strengthen the statement, what will weaken the statement. There were several questions regarding strengthening and weakening. Then there were many questions regarding that with which of the following statements the author would agree with. There were many questions regarding that in most of the passages. Then there were questions on assumptions, there were questions on conclusions. This was a very easy passage again, just like English, just like English and logical. They were the balancing passages, easy passage, not a very difficult passage, not a very difficult section actually. Quant, a bit different. The standard of question was a bit higher if we compare to previous years. The As I already mentioned, the data was not presented in a tabulated form so that you can just pick and start implementing, interpreting it. You had to form the table. You have to find the data. You have to uh, you have to spend some time essentially. It was a time consuming section. Only 15 questions, but for those 15 questions, you have to spend good amount of time. So the topics for 10th level only, percentage, market price, ratio, all these topics I've studied in class 10th. But the way to get the answer, the way to interpret the data that was presented, that required some time. That some time was needed to finish this section. So that was about quant. Overall, if we talk about the overall what was the difficulty level and what was the ideal attempt, what was the good score. So in English, we can say that it was easy but lengthy. So an ideal attempt, if you have attempted like 24 questions, 28 questions, that's an ideal attempt. We should have attempted these many questions, and a good score would be anything between above 25 would be a good score. Current affairs was difficult. So even if you have attempted 18 questions or 23 questions, that is also an ideal attempt. And a good score could be anything above 17. Legal reasoning was moderate, and if you are 30 to 35 questions was the ideal attempt. And if you have attempted 30 plus, that's a good score. There were only 40 questions in legal reasoning. uh, Quantitative techniques, in fact, legal reasoning was lengthy. That is why, it was not difficult but lengthy. Quantitative technique, again, even if you have attempted like 7 to 12 questions, that's an ideal attempt, and a good score would be anything above 8. So it was moderate to difficult. Logical reasoning, ideal attempt could be 25 to 30, and this again was easy. And if you're getting 25 plus, that is a good score for logical reasoning. Overall, if you're getting 100 plus in this CLAT 2023, that's a good score. 100 plus is a good score. And if you have attempted if your attempt is in 120, 125, 28, that is something you could have easily done it, and good score will be 100 plus. Overall, paper was moderate, except with few surprises in general knowledge section, in DI section. Surprises in the sense that the form of asking question was a bit different. So if a student is not completely prepared for such kind of questions, he must have got a setback initially. So this was the situation in CLAT 2023 this time. The answer key has been said that it will be released by tonight or tomorrow. So most probably by tomorrow you will get the answer key. You can see how many questions you attempted. You must have the carbon copy of your OMR sheet. Just tally the answers that you have marked with the answer key that will be released. That will give you some idea about what will be your score, what could you expect accordingly. We'll keep making videos regarding your the upcoming processes, how the selection process will begin, and when the results will come, and the counseling process and everything. We will keep providing assistance regarding that. So CLAT is done. If you have done good, all the best. Very great, great for you. If it did not go as per your expectations, never mind. Uh, Wait for the results, because uh, there are many students who face the same challenges that you are facing. They are feeling the same way that you are feeling. They also found general knowledge a bit challenging. They also found DI a bit challenging. They also found the paper a bit lengthy. So it's a competitive examination. It was not an examination where you have to get 150 out of 150. It is relative, how others performed and how you performed. So on the basis of how everybody performed, The rank list will be accordingly. So wait for the results and be hopeful, be positive, and hopefully you will get into one of these top national universities after this examination. That's all for right now. Thank you so much. See you in the next video where we will guide you further regarding your upcoming admission process.